And welcome to another episode of Radiant Central, and I'm your host Natasha St. Michael, and thank you so much for joining me. So today I'm going to give some tips on how to transition off of a raw vegan diet to a whole food diet, and including cooked foods, and how to do it without gaining weight. I received a request on this specifically about getting off of a diet and how not to gain weight or regain the weight that they lost. And I know that a lot of people, it's a big fear, and this is from being on any diet, is that they go on a diet, they want to lose weight, they lose it, next thing you know it, they want to add in more food into their diet, and they're fearful that it's going to come back and even more. So I'm going to give some tips starting with doing a raw vegan diet as a cleanse and short term. Okay, I'm going to give tips for that, and then tips for those that have been on a raw vegan diet for several years and more long term, because transition can be a little bit different. So for those that, let's say, have decided to go on a raw vegan diet because they want to kickstart healthy eating, they want to lose weight, they want to just do a gentle cleanse, and they decide to do it for a week, for a month, what to do when they want to transition onto eating cooked foods. So the main thing is that the beauty of doing a raw vegan diet, especially as a cleanse in short term, is that you're starting to eat healthy, okay? Like all of a sudden you are taking a break from all processed food, all sugar, all food additives, flavor enhancers, preservatives, everything, and you're eating just whole foods, right? And this is a huge accomplishment for anyone that does it for a few days, a week, a few weeks, even a few months. It's major because you're breaking habits. And so the one thing is you want to continue with keeping the bad habits broken, and you don't want to resume doing those things. So the one thing that I suggest is that if someone wants to start adding in more cooked foods into their diet and adding in more variety, is to think about it beforehand, you know, to get ready for it and to plan it and to think about, okay, what do I want to bring in? What do I want to stay away from? And also focusing on what you've already accomplished. A lot of times people forget after they've done like a week of raw foods, they forget what their diet was like before. I see this a lot where, you know, it's like they first start a raw vegan diet and they're coming from decades of drinking coffee all day long and soda and living off of fast food and junk food, and suddenly they do the raw vegan diet for a week or a few weeks, and they go through the transition and letting go of those addictions. They get to the other side and they feel great, and then they want to add in other foods, and they're so scared that they're going to gain all the weight back. And it's a matter of really being able to see, you know, where did I come from? You know, where did I start from? And knowing that, like, as long as you don't go back to that, you'll be fine with losing the weight and keeping it off. And in fact, continuing to lose weight. You know, there's no reason why you cannot if you add in more variety into your diet. I see this all the time. Like every month I host a 7-day raw food challenge, which is like a simple cleanse, right? And I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen over and over again how people have come from, you know, all sorts of diets and then on to doing like a raw food cleanse, and then afterwards, you know, they've been successful with losing a few pounds during that week, and then they continue losing weight, even when they bring in other foods that are cooked and different food groups that they weren't eating before. You know, as long as they stuck to something that's healthy, and as long as they were prepared beforehand, no problem, okay? So it's just don't pick up the bad habits. Leave those aside. You conquered them while you're on the raw vegan diet, and now it's just time to move forward and add a few other foods in. Keep it simple, okay? And so for those that have been on a raw vegan diet for a few years, there are more adjustments to make, because the one thing is that when we've been doing something for several years and it becomes habit, and suddenly we change that habit, there's going to be adjustments, and especially when it comes down to eating. As most of you know, I was on a raw vegan diet for almost 4 years, and before that I was a strict vegetarian for, say, almost 25 years, and I didn't eat any meat, no fish, no seafood, nothing. And I'd say about a year and a half ago I found out I had a B12 deficiency, and I decided to add in animal foods into my diet and get off of a raw vegan diet. I add in also some cooked whole foods into my diet as well. And for me, the transition was a big one, especially because I've been vegetarian for almost my whole life, 2/3 of my life. So, and suddenly adding in animal foods was big. And it was also learning how to make the food, how to prepare it, and how to eat it. So I can give a lot of tips on this one, especially when you've been doing something for so many years, and how to change that and how to let the body adjust. So the first thing is take it slow, okay? Slowly, slowly. Don't just throw yourself into eating, a mass amount of cooked foods, the next day. It's really just slowly adding in the foods. Second thing is don't go back to bad habits. Okay, I think the worst thing that people do is that, and this is coming off of any diet, is that if they've been on one type of diet where they cut out a lot of processed food and a lot of junk food, and suddenly they're bringing in food groups that they weren't eating while they're on the diet, and suddenly they decide, oh, I might as well have this treat here, and I can have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. If they're able to keep that like under moderation and have it once in a while as a treat, no problem. But sometimes people start introducing foods they haven't had for years, and the junk food they haven't had for years, and next thing you know, that's all they're eating. So avoid that. Avoid the foods that don't make your body feel good. Second thing too is that, and this is a major one, is portion control. Okay, so anyone that's been on a raw vegan diet for many years gets used to eating huge amounts of food, because raw vegan food is very, very low in calories. So we're not eating like a tiny little salad. When we eat a salad, it's a huge salad. We're not eating one piece of fruit, we're eating like 5 or 10 pieces of fruit for a meal. And if someone's doing this just for a week or a month, then it's easier for them to go back to, if they're adding cooked foods into their diet, it's easier for them to go back to it because they're used to having those portions. They know what it looks like. It's not, their habits and routine hasn't changed so much for such a long period of time that they're able to sort of revert back to it. But if someone's been on a raw vegan diet for several years and suddenly they're going back to cooked food and they don't want to gain weight, you have to watch the portions, and you have to relearn to know when your body gets full, because it's very different from being on a cooked food diet compared to being on a raw diet. Raw diet, you eat more. Cooked food diet, you eat less, volume-wise. Okay, so that was something, personally, was the biggest thing I had to relearn, And one thing that kind of helped was, or two things that kind of helped was, the first was being mindful, okay? That I really sit down with my meals and I put a portion on my plate, I eat it slow, and really listen to my body for when it's full, okay? And then I kind of check in with myself throughout the day, do I still feel full? Do I feel like 2 hours later I need to eat again? And if that's the case, then I need to make adjustments with my food, okay? That I'm not eating too little and I'm not eating too much. And another thing that helped too was just watching how much other people ate, because I was so used to eating huge portions and always concentrating on my food and not everyone else's, that when I started adding in the cooked food into my diet, I had to kind of see, okay, how much does like a regular person eat of meat, or how much they eat, of grains, things like that, so that I wasn't overdoing it, because I felt in the beginning I was. And so that's something really to keep into consideration. And then I'd say the third thing is, whatever you do, don't yo-yo diet, okay? This is what I see a lot, is that someone's been on a diet for a long time, okay? And this could be any diet, okay? And they've lost weight and they're ready to bring in more foods and more variety, and suddenly they start adding in foods, whole foods, into their diet, and within 2 weeks they start getting panicky, they get kind of nervous, they're like, what if I'm going to gain the weight? And they go back to their old diet, and then they do their diet for like 2 weeks, and then they go back to adding in more foods, and they go back and forth, and this not only makes people crazy and obsessed with their food and creates some eating disorders as well, or a lot of stress around food, but it can also contribute to weight gain. Okay, our body likes rhythm, it likes routine, and if we're constantly switching our diet and doing this one day and that the next day, and it just sets people up for disaster. So the moment that someone decides, you know what, I'm going to add in more food groups into my diet, I'm going to add in more variety, then make a commitment to do that long term. Make a commitment that whatever you're going to do, you're going to do forever. That it's not, you're not just going from one diet to another, okay? We want to, like if someone's trying to lose weight and they finally lost the weight, then we want to create eating patterns and habits that they can do forever. You know, that they're not always on a diet. They're not always watching every piece of food they're putting in their mouth, okay? And then the last tip I have is you create your reality, okay? When this person emailed me, they'd said, you know, I hear so many stories of people gaining weight when they get off of their raw vegan diet. I don't want that to happen to me. I hear this all the time because there's so many stories on the internet of so-and-so that lost X amount of weight, and once they got off their diet, they gained it all back and even more. But you create your reality. You decide, I'm going to get off this diet and I'm going to keep the weight off. It's simple. I'm going to do it. I'm not like so-and-so. You know, this is my body. I have control over it. It's mine. And I determine what my destiny is. Because a lot of times it's what we tell ourselves that happens. And if we fill ourselves with anxiety and fear that we're going to gain weight and even more, probably will. But the moment that someone says to themselves, you know what, that's not going to happen to me. I'm good. I'm just adding more variety in. That's it. I'm keeping it simple. You know, and perhaps if I even need to be losing a little bit more weight, it's going to come flying off. Be amazed to see what the difference is just in our attitude towards that. All right, so those are my tips for today. Wishing you a fabulous day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.